All right, everyone. Welcome to another edition of IB Nation Sports Talk. I am Vince D'Addario. That over there is not Sean Stiers. That is ND Insider Tom Noie. How you doing, Tom?
I am doing awesome, even though I'm covering a 1-7 Notre Dame men's basketball team. I'm still doing awesome because
I knew you would be.
You.
Oh yeah, that's got to be what it is. That's got to be what it is. So I mean, obviously life is good because everybody knows what my day job is, and I haven't seen Tom's daughter in my office. So, life is always good.
You won't. Hey, wait. I do have to ask you, were you a chaperone for Snowball on Sunday night?
I was there the entire time, my friend. Yes, I was.
I should have had her come over and introduce herself to you.
You should have.
She did go to the dance. It was a dance on Sunday night here in Northern Indiana. They do that every year because they have Monday off, so they do the dance on a Sunday. So she was there. I don't know, so time as a sophomore, but we'll see.
Yep. It was an interesting evening. I will put it that way. It's the first high school dance that I have been mandated to attend since I was in high school. So, things have changed a little bit. I'll just say that since I was going to dances. So, but anyway, let's talk. You know what? Let's jump in and we'll talk about your day job and what I know. It's not the most comfortable of subjects, I'm guessing, right about now.
No, it's fine. I mean, it's fine. Everybody says I hate, and I get this on Twitter all the time.
Yeah.
I can't believe you have to cover this team. Look, that's the deal that we sign up for. And that's,
right.
I didn't sign up to be a Notre Dame men's basketball beat writer for the South Bend Tribune with the stipulation that I'm only going to cover them when they're really good or they go to the Sweet 16, or in the case of 2015 and 16, they make it to the Elite Eight. Like, if you're going to do this job, you have to do this job. And some of it is really cool. 98% of it is awesome. Doing the travel, watching basketball, getting to communicate and have a relationship with people in the college basketball world. 98% of it is great. 2% of it is not so great, but that doesn't mean you have to stop doing the job. And you can't say, well, yeah, the season sucks because the team sucks. Every season is a season unto itself. And this one just happens to be going not very well for the Irish and Mike Gray.
So let me start with this. Obviously, you're about as tuned in to the basketball program as you could possibly be. You've been covering the team for how long? A while, right? Since when?
25 years.
25 years. So you of all people know this program better than most. Did you see this year coming in any way, shape, or form?
No, and nobody did. Like, if anybody says, just like if they say last year, yeah, we saw 15-5 coming from the ACC. We saw 2 wins in the NCAA tournament for the first time since 2016. Baloney. Nobody saw last year coming, just like nobody saw this year coming. Because look, you can say this piece doesn't fit, that piece doesn't fit. They don't have this guy, they don't have that guy, they don't have these guys on the bench. What they do have are 4 guys in Trey Wirtz, Dane Goodwin, Nate Lashevsky, and Cormac Ryan who thought and who believed they could get back to the NCAA tournament. If there was any sort of underlying issue that wasn't bubbling to the surface, that wasn't known publicly, those 4 guys are out the door and they're starting over, and everybody's like, it's time to start fresh. They believed, and rightfully so, back in October, that they could get back to the NCAA tournament for myriad reasons, Vince. That we can go through and discuss and say
we'll hit a few.
For myriad reasons, they're 9-10, and some of it is the roster makeup, some of it is the unfortunate bounce of a college basketball, some of it is just the rhythm of a season where Mike Brey thought going in he had these 7 guys in these 7 roles, and they were going to ride that through to March. When that didn't happen, it threw everything out of whack, and it's not been able to be put back into place. And I don't believe it will be put back into place.
Okay, well, let's jump up from there. So obviously you've been doing this a while. You've been following Mike Brey since his first game in South Bend, and he's done a lot of really great things. Do you see, is it a 1-year thing with him? Is it, and I shouldn't even say with him, maybe with the program, because, and again, I want to remind everybody that's in the chat and everybody that's listening, we're not going to talk about replacements for a job that is not open. I mean, this job's not open, and we never call for anybody to be fired. It's not how we operate. So we're not really going to go down that road, but we can talk about the state of the program and kind of where things are, right? So from your perspective, I mean, you just said it yourself. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you said it yourself. You don't see this thing getting any better anytime soon. What brings you to that conclusion, and why do you say that?
Mike Brey in his 23rd year, Mike Brey with a roster that he constructed, that he believed that it was a win now situation where everything was pointing in the direction of at the very least, getting back to the NCAA tournament a second straight season. And because that hasn't happened, because we've been through the struggles with Mike Brey in 17-18 and 18-19. And oh, by the way, there was a COVID year that I think Notre Dame fans conveniently forget that they didn't know going into the 2021 season, whether or not they were going to play 3 months or 3 days.
Sure.
But for some reason, because it fits the narrative, Notre Dame fans like to say, Notre Dame didn't make the NCAA tournament that year too. Did we really expect Notre Dame to make the NCAA tournament during a COVID year? So there have been struggles all along. We thought those struggles were properly addressed and properly solved last season, to where there was momentum, there was recruiting momentum, there was roster momentum, there was staff momentum, there was what Mike Brey talked about last year, fabric momentum, the fabric of the program, just the overall day-to-day operation that he really liked where it was at. All of that has just kind of dissipated and faded. And if you saw Mike Brey's post-game meeting with the media after the Florida State game, you can see that every button, whatever it is, young guys, let's do this lineup. What about the old guy? Let's do that. Every button, every conceivable button. Now that everybody's going to say, well, he hasn't pushed the bench button. Look, Dom Campbell, Tony Sanders, Matt Zona are not ACC ready. And that's the way this program operates. Like, you're not going to play as a freshman or a sophomore, sometimes as a junior, but as a senior, you have to play. That's the way the program has long operated. Mike Brey's not going to stray from that. Mike Brey believed he could ride this group one more season back to the NCAA tournament. And when it doesn't happen and it starts falling apart, and you see the way they lose games at home to Syracuse, at Boston College, at Florida State, when they have a chance for the game-winning bucket at the end of regulation there with Cormac Ryan. Oh, but the fifth-year guard turns it over, and they lose by one. When they lose games in that manner, and then the way they started Tuesday against Florida State, it's just something where if you've been around this program day to day, and you've been around these coaches and these players day to day, it's just something where something has to change. And we all know what that change eventually will be. But it's just at some point, you just have to say, you know what? It's time. It's just it's time to say thank you for 23 years. Thank you for putting Notre Dame men's basketball back on the map.
Yeah.
Because they were so far off the map when Mike Brey walked in the door in July 2000 that they needed a map just to get back on the map. That's how far away they were. But thanks for everything. Thanks for the job you did in the Big East. Thanks for the job you did in the ACC. And Mike Brey will be the first to say, I haven't done the job this year. I don't think I'm up to having to do another rebuild or climb back to the NCAA tournament in 23-24. And that's maybe time for a new voice and a new direction with this basketball program.
Matt Lee has an interesting question, and it goes along with what you're talking about. So I wanted to bring it up because I think it fits. He says, hey, Tom and Vince, how hard will it be if Jack decides, and I'm kind of paraphrasing and editing just because I want to make sure I don't cross any lines here, but how hard would it be for Jack Swarbrick to ask Mike Brey to walk away if he decides to go that route?
Not very hard, because it's never going to get to that situation. I think Jack Swarbrick is on the record with the South Bend Tribune, with ND Insider, as saying Mike Brey can coach at the University of Notre Dame for as long as Mike Brey wants. He's earned that right as the winningest coach in program history. He's earned that right for having to steer them through the Big East and all the changes that went through the Big East, for having to steer them through the ACC, where, oh, by the way, they did win a conference tournament championship, where some teams in that league have been there for 50 plus years and have never done what Notre Dame did in year 2 in the ACC. So it's not going to be a situation where Jack Swarbrick sits Mike Brey down and says, we need to have a very frank and hard and difficult discussion about the future of Notre Dame men's basketball. Look, Mike Brey's a lot of things, and Mike Brey's a smart guy. He understands what the one-loss record is. He understands what the public perception is. He understands where this program is and how it got there and who's responsible for it. Mike Brey is not going to hang around the Notre Dame men's basketball program just to collect a nice little paycheck, or I should say a nice big paycheck,
right?
Monthly or however he's compensated. When Mike Brey when Mike Brey knows it's time to go, guess what? He's going.
Okay. All right. So this is I'm going to ask Tom's opinion on this one, right? How frustrating must it be for Mike Brey? Because on paper, this is how he wants to construct a team. They're all old. Those are the guys he's counting on. It's a shortish bench. He's got guys there for the future. He's got a little sprinkling of some youth, obviously. I mean, this is his ideal roster as far as guys that have been in the program for a while, et cetera, and that it's just not working. I mean, how frustrating must that be for him at this stage in his career?
Unbelievably, because and you could see the frustration starting to build a couple of years ago when he went through a similar situation where there were injuries. They had to play young guys, but even when they had to play young guys, every button he tried to push and every move he tried to make, it just was met with I don't want to say indifferent response, but a response that maybe he wasn't looking for, like back in 2010 or back in 2009 when they decided to go, oh, Luke Herringoti's out for 6 weeks. We're going to have to go to the burn offense. Everybody kind of rallied around that and was galvanized by, this is the way we've got to play. Let's play this way and let's have success this way. He hasn't been able to reach these guys for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And it's something where, Mike Brey, to a point and to a large point, it does fall on him, but eventually some of the blame and some of the responsibility has to be shouldered by the guys that were given so much responsibility and so much leeway. And here, this is your team. Run with it. Take ownership in it. Be the old guys. Be the senior leaders.
Sure.
Be the guys that are going to carry this program back for a second straight year. And for whatever reason, and you just can't get into the psyche of 21, 22, 23-year-old fifth-year guys as to why they decided to come back if this was going to be such an absolute disaster the way it's turned out to be.
Sure. Absolutely. Those guys had a decision to make at the end of last year, and we weren't really sure whether they're going to stay or they're going to go. They obviously saw something as a unit with this team and the way it was going to be constructed. Hey, we're going to get back to the NCAA tournament, because why wouldn't they want to go out on a high note of making it back to the tournament after so many years and, the whole thing? And, hey, we'll just let them rebuild. And we went out, we got to the tournament, we did what we wanted to do. They obviously saw something in what this roster was going to look like.
And that's the hard part, because, I mean, you look at Dane Goodwin and you kind of get the sense that Dane Goodwin is not happy being the second big. But here's a news flash. Stop the presses, Dane Goodwin. You knew before you came back, if you came back, you were going to be the second big. Like, that was the role you were going to play. Trey Wirtz, if you were going to come back, you wanted to come back and play more minutes. You were going to be the point guard. Why haven't you been the point guard? Why have you played so passively in situations that require you not to play that way? Nate Laszewski, you knew you were going to be the only major veteran big with any experience. Why have you not responded since starting out the season so well? I mean,
sure.
Cormac Ryan, look at what there were not 10 better players in the entire NCAA tournament last year than Cormac Ryan and what he did in those 3 games against Rutgers, Alabama, and Texas Tech. Those expectations were going to carry forward through into this year. If you didn't want to handle those expectations, why did you come back? So it's just something where they all knew the deal. Like sure. they didn't walk in the door in October and look around and say, we may only play 7 guys, or we've got to rely a lot on freshmen and JJ Starling and Van Allen Lubin, or we might really be missing one real key piece to being a very good basketball team. Like they knew before they decided to come back what the deal was going to be in 22 and 23.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. I know this is going to sound silly, but it's January 18th. I want to talk about the future of Notre Dame basketball from a roster standpoint, okay? So, and I got a little bit of skin in the game because I get to see a kid who's going to be going to Notre Dame next year, every home game that he plays, and I'm talking about Marcus Burton. He's the guard from Penn locally, and he is, I don't know if you've seen him play this year. Do you cover any high school sports this year for basketball?
I will be making my way to the Palace on Friday night.
Because I thought you might.
There's kind of a big game there on Friday night with the Penn Kingsmen.
Yeah, I thought you might. So it's number 1 or number 2, 3. I forget where they are in 4A, but they're playing the number 1 team in 3A in Mishawaka Marion, former home of Demetrius Jackson for all of those Irish fans out there. But it should be a good big game. It's going to be at the Palace. I'll be there, monitoring the student section, et cetera, because they're letting all the students in free because they want a big student section. But he has actually, I watched him a lot growing up. I would do a couple of Penn games a year. He was always a good player. I wasn't, overly impressed by him. This year, he has taken his game to a completely other level, at least with my own eyes. He's a little undersized. I think he's 6'1". At least that's what they say that he is. I don't even know that he's that, to be honest with you.
5'11".
Yeah, I think that's probably more. I think that's more accurate. But he is so good with the basketball, around the rim, his shot, all of the above. What are you hearing about Marcus Burton and how he's going to fit in this completely new look roster that Notre Dame's going to have next year?
I have absolutely no idea because you have to begin with the head coach. And as we sit here on January 18th, we don't know what the head coaching situation is going to be. Now, that said, regardless, whoever the coach is, whether it's Mike Bray, nothing changes. Status quo. Marcus Burton's going to come in. He'll be able to be a complementary piece.
Sure.
If JJ Starling sticks around with a backcourt that features JJ Starling and maybe Marcus Burton. I don't think Marcus Burton is a starter as a freshman, regardless of who the coach is, but he's got a chance to be a really good college guard. He's got to get on a weight program because as dynamic as he is playing in the Northern Indiana Conference, he's still playing in the Northern Indiana Conference.
He's undersized. Yeah.
He's very undersized. Yeah. He's very small, but whoever the coach is, I think will be able to find a place for Marcus Burton because let's just say hypothetically, there's a new coach at the University of Notre Dame for men's basketball. The last thing that the new coach will want to do is to tell a local kid, not only a local kid, but a kid who's going to soon be the all-time leading scorer in Penn High School boys basketball history on Friday night against Marion, to tell a local kid, and a local standout, and knock on wood, maybe Mr. Basketball in the state of Indiana.
He's got a shot.
That he doesn't have a place on the 2023-24 roster. So Marcus Burton will find a place at Notre Dame.
Sure.
Who he plays for and how he plays all remain to be seen at this point because we just don't know who the coach is going to be and what that roster is going to look like in come fall. We just don't know.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. But what are your thoughts on how the current freshman class is faring at Notre Dame and what that future looks like, because you kind of scare me a little bit when you talk about if JJ Starling is on the roster next year. I mean, it's a little scary if you're a Notre Dame basketball fan, for sure.
If
I know.
Yes, we and this is what college basketball is now. Like, Notre Dame fans want to stay up at night and toss and turn. Go look at what happened when LSU fired Will Wade last year. Will Wade gets fired now for totally different circumstances than maybe what happens with Mike Brey should he decide that this is it. LSU had at one point 0 players on its returning roster. Everybody left.
Wow.
Either to the transfer portal or the NBA or wherever. They were like, we're done. We're out of here. They had 0 returning scholarship players. That could be a possibility at Notre Dame. JJ Starling will say and do all the right things on January 18th. Sure. That may change come March 18th. Van Allen Lubin, again, January 18th, I'm good. March 18th, maybe not so good. Both those guys said when they were recruited, when they committed, and when they signed, one of the reasons they did so was to come play for Mike Brey. Van Allen Lubin is a long way from home.
Yeah.
Never seen snow before this past October, November, whenever we had our first snow in northern Indiana. He's a long way from home. Had a lot of SEC schools looking at him last year, but when he decided to commit, what's the coaching staff situation? What's the assistant coaching staff situation? Does Ven see himself at Notre Dame for a year or 2 years? Those are all questions that remain to be seen. I cannot sit here on January 18th and say for certain there's anybody returning on this roster next year. Like, you can say there may be a few guys coming back. You can say there's nobody coming back.
Yeah.
You have no idea, because that's the way of the college basketball world, especially in the transfer portal. JJ Starling feels like he can grow and develop somewhere else. He's gone. Same with Van Allen Lubin. Same with Dom Campbell. Same with J.R. Knesny, a local guy who basically hasn't played in 2 years. You have no idea what the offseason is going to hold for this program and this roster. None. So
scary thoughts that they could lose those guys. But be careful, I get it.
Be careful what you wish for, Notre Dame fans.
Yeah.
Because you're really close to seeing it happen. And when it does, hey, that's what you get when you decide you're going to make a coaching change.
Mm-hmm.
When somebody decides they're going to leave. This is the way of the college basketball world as we know it in 2023.
Oh my gosh, that is just scary to think about. Okay. Well, let's put a bow on the basketball talk, at least between you and me. We're going to jump into a little mailbag. So before we do, make sure you hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, tell your friends, leave us a 5-star review, all that fun stuff. We would really, really appreciate it. So let's jump into our Wednesday night mailbag. I've got a couple of questions starred, and so we'll start with those, but get your questions in, and we will, I'll toss them up to Tom. He and I will toss them around. Football, basketball, non-sport related, whatever you got. Give us a little something. Hey, man, let's go. I'm telling you, I was there late tonight. But anyway, so give us some questions. Here we go. Let's Benjamin has our first question. In the future, could you see Notre Dame changing up their football schedule to help maximize recruiting? Tom, I will let you lead off.
I have absolutely no idea, because how do you maximize recruiting through your schedule? You're tied into the ACC with at least 5 games a year. You're playing Navy every year. You're playing Stanford every year. You're playing USC every year. You've got to have a couple of those gimme home games that they have next season in Tennessee State and Central Michigan. There might be another one. There might be another one on there that I'm missing. Another bye game.
There's another gimme game in there as well.
Yeah.
I've got to look it up.
Western,
but yes, there is. West. Is it Central Michigan?
Well, and then is Bowling Green on there?
Oh, and see, now I got to look it up.
I know Central Michigan and Tennessee State. I don't know the third. But again, like how do you what do you feel like Notre Dame considers itself a national school when it comes to football, scheduling. They'll go anywhere, they'll play anybody. I think that helps recruiting pretty darn well right there.
Yeah, absolutely. No question about it. I mean, I guess right now you'd call Navy kind of a bit of a layup since they got a brand new coach and they haven't really been much of anything as far as competitive over the last few years. But you've got, so I'll roll through it here real quick. August 26th, Navy. September 2nd, Tennessee State. September 16th, Central Michigan. September 23rd, home against Ohio State. September 30th, on the road against Duke. October 7th, on the road against Louisville. October 14th, on the home against Southern Cal. October 28th, so there's a bye in there. Let's see, home against Pitt. Then you've got November 4th on the road against Clemson. Then you get another bye, then home against Wake Forest, and then on the road to finish out the season against Stanford. So that is the schedule. And, as far as recruiting is concerned, I mean, if you look at their schedule, they're already a coast-to-coast schedule. I mean, They play in California. They play on the East Coast. They're in the ACC, obviously. They're playing in Ireland for goodness sake. So, I mean, they're playing worldwide. There's logistic issues with like playing in SEC country, for example, because then you look at you get into TV rights and you get into all of these different things that, the average fan doesn't really think about when it comes to where you're going to play your home games and your away games and all of those different things. So, this day and age with technology and the way things go, I don't know that you need to schedule games in fertile recruiting lands. It doesn't hurt, but I don't think you need to. All of Notre Dame's games are easily accessible, for kids to watch because they're either on ABC, ESPN, or NBC. So, or I guess one game will be on Peacock, but don't get me started on that. But all the games are easily accessible. It's not like 1991 where you couldn't find the games except unless they were at home against, on NBC, right? So games are much more easily accessible now. So I don't know that it matters quite as much.
It doesn't. I mean, Notre Dame is a national brand. You'd argue one of the top 5 national brands in college football: Texas, Michigan, USC, Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, Notre Dame. They can go anywhere. They can play anybody. And it's not going to affect their recruiting. It's only going to help it because they're such a national school and they recruit nationally. It's not like they have to go play a game, a one-off game against Minnesota in US Bank Stadium in Minneapolis to help their Midwest recruiting. Like if you want to go to Notre Dame and you have interest in Notre Dame, you're going to wind up watching the Irish wherever they're playing, whenever they're playing, and whoever they're playing.
Right. Could not agree more. All right. Well, thanks for the question. We got another one from Ben. He says, with the big push for a playoff run this year, what players on the Irish roster need to be breakout players for Notre Dame to win the title? And I assume he's meaning football here.
We're not talking basketball. we're not talking. Notre Dame's not winning any titles. And again, not to dampen anybody's enthusiasm for 2023. But I think they're still a step away from getting to title contenders, to getting to college football playoff contenders. I think when the field expands in 2024 and they go to a 12-team playoff, that it will help Notre Dame. But who needs to improve this year? You have to start at the quarterback position because you look at college football, everything, even football in general, everything is so geared to having an elite guy at that quarterback position. And if you don't, then you're just an average program. And we've seen that.
Yep. Could not agree more. Obviously starts, and I don't know if it ends at the quarterback position, but it definitely starts at the quarterback position because Notre Dame's been a quarterback away for quite a while, in my opinion. If we want to say, okay, which position needs to have a breakout situation other than quarterback, I think it needs to be, you're going to need to get some elite play at one of the ends. You're going to need to be able to put some pressure on a defensive line. No doubt about it. There's a lot of names down there. Who's going to step up and be those guys? I don't know the answer to that. I mean, I don't know. Defensive line is going to have to be big. I think somebody's going to have to step up big at linebacker, whether that's J.D. Bertrand takes a step, whether Prince Collie gets an opportunity. What does it look like at linebacker? I think they need somebody at linebacker in order to be elite. I mean, we're talking about a Notre Dame to win the title. They don't have an elite defense right now. So the front seven is going to have a couple of guys step up in order to be elite. You're going to need to put some pressure on the quarterback, and you're going to need to make consistent tackles at the second level. So that's where I'm at there. As far as some specific guys, we'll see.
Yeah, I think it's just way too early to know a specific guy who replaces Isaiah Foskey as your sack guy, who replaces Michael Mayer as your can't miss, gotta have target on offense. So you need to find guys like that and then continue to go and recruit and build the depth to where you can maybe challenge the Georgias and Ohio States and Alabamas and Michigans of the college football world.
Yeah, absolutely. We do have a super chat here from W118CMH. I'm sure that stands for something, but I'm not smart enough to figure it out. Thank you for the super chat. How different is this team, meaning the Hoops team, if Basile chooses Notre Dame instead of Virginia Tech, moving guys like Nate, Dane, etc., back to their normal position? I think it's big.
He was a guy that they looked at in the transfer portal. That would be Grant Basile, who was at Wright State last year, helped lead Wright State to the NCAA tournament. Basile looked at Notre Dame the same weekend as Marcus Hammond during the Blue Gold game weekend. Everything was right there. And again, it's not something that Notre Dame didn't do in trying to get a transfer big out of the transfer portal. Mike Brey showed him everything. Here's playing time. Here are minutes. Here's opportunity. For whatever reason, he thought he could do better at Virginia Tech. And you look at the right now, as we sit here on January 18th, the two most disappointing teams in the ACC are Notre Dame and Virginia Tech. So at Virginia Tech, he felt like he was in a better situation going to Blacksburg. Virginia Tech right now is 1-5 in the league. So maybe he wasn't the type of player that was a difference maker in the transfer portal, which I mean, when you get to the transfer portal, when you get to looking at guys that Notre Dame can actually get into school and add to that roster, it's such a crapshoot and it's such a small pool to choose from that you've got to be right and you've got to hit it for whatever reason. Maybe Grant Basile wasn't the guy that was going to fit at Notre Dame for whatever reason.
All right, I'm going to leave it at that because that subject way better than I do. So moving on to the next question from It Ain't Rocket Science. If Freeman wins wins a title in one of these next 3 seasons, like I think he will, basketball recruiting will experience an uptick in recruiting as a result as well, I hope. So do you think there's a correlation between the football team winning a national title and the basketball team upping its recruiting game is basically the question?
None.
Zero? Nothing?
Zero. That's all I got. Nothing. Like it doesn't matter what they do football wise. I mean, football helps to an extent with the visibility of the men's basketball program, but there was a time where Mike Brey would only host recruits on football weekends because he wanted to see the pageantry and the aura and everything else that goes along with having a home football game. A couple of years ago, he got away from that and started hosting recruits on non-football weekends. Guess who one of the guys that committed on a non-football weekend was? J.J. Starling. He came in on Labor Day weekend when Notre Dame was playing football down in Tallahassee, and he loved the campus. So I think it's a little overrated and a little too simplistic to say the success that Notre Dame football has a direct correlation and can boost the Notre Dame men's basketball program. Like Notre Dame men's basketball is its separate entity, and they're not really concerned, and football's not really concerned about how basketball's doing, and basketball's not that concerned about how football's doing.
Let me ask you a question. I don't know why this popped into my head while you were answering that question. So it's kind of a follow-up to this one. Do you think, and you can call me crazy, it wouldn't be the first time.
Yeah, and I won't just call you crazy, Vince. You know that.
I know that. And that's what I appreciate about you. So Do you think part of like bringing kids in on football weekends before they had the renovated Rolf Center and the whole thing was to almost like a head fake, like, hey, there's a lot going on here at the university, but we don't have great facilities. But hey, check out football and all that. But now that they've got Rolfs, they don't really need all the extra fanfare. Does that have anything to do with it, you think?
Absolutely. Like,
Okay.
like, why don't you come look at what our campus is like when Notre Dame and Georgia are playing a night game at Notre Dame Stadium, and there's 80,000 people here, and game days here, and look at what happens on a Saturday. And oh, by the way, don't pay attention to that basement practice facility called the Pit where they used to practice in. Now, there wasn't much to show them being basketball recruits during football weekends before Rolfs Hall and before the renovation of Purcell Pavilion. Now they believe they can stand. They can the program can stand on its own merits of the renovated arena, the standalone practice facility, some of the all the bells and whistles that go with both those places. Where it's like, yeah, football's good, but hey, look, we got some pretty good basketball stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it is such a night and day difference from what they have now to what they used to have. I mean, it is. Do they still compete with the other ACC schools out there from a facility standpoint with Rolfs?
It's hard because I think Rolfs is probably one of the best standalone practice facilities, not only in the league but in the country.
Okay.
And in getting guys like Paul Atkinson from Yale a couple years ago, in getting Marcus Freeman. I always say Marcus Freeman. Marcus Hammond from Niagara. When Marcus Hammond and Paul Atkinson walked into Rolfs the first time, they said, "Wait, you mean I can come in here whenever I want and go make myself a smoothie at the smoothie station, or go to the nutrition center and do this? And I got the weight room here, and I got the locker room and the lounge area and all this. Like I can come in here whenever I want. Like, where do I sign up for that?"
Yeah.
And I think to an extent, I think Mike Bray talked about it Tuesday, where he has said that he has spoiled his guys to an extent. I think Rolfs Hall has kind of spoiled the Notre Dame men's basketball program to where they had nothing for so long, and now they have everything.
Yeah.
That it's something where I don't know if they appreciate everything they have or everything they didn't have before they had Rolfs Hall.
That's actually a really good point. I never really thought of it that way. So now this is speculation. You speculated a little bit earlier. Notre Dame, do they have a package, facilities, the whole thing, that is attractive to a head coach? Because there's a lot going on at Notre Dame as far as who you can recruit, all of those things. Is it an attractive place for a basketball coach?
Depends on what type of basketball coach you're looking at. Okay. Like if you have an egoless basketball coach, like Mike Bray has been for most of his 23 years,
sure.
Yeah, it's a good job. But if you have a basketball coach that comes in here and says, I want all the things and the little details that go into the football program, you're probably not going to be coaching at the University of Notre Dame, because you have to understand that football is going to get a lot more than what the men's basketball program is going to get a lot more than what the women's basketball program is going to get, or the baseball program, or pick your program at Notre Dame. It takes a special type of coach and a special type of person with an ego and a vision and just a locked in mentality, a tunnel vision to say, I want to coach here and make this my program for reasons that are this, and this, and not because I want to make it the next Duke or the next Carolina. It's a really hard job. And It's not a job that somebody's going to just walk in off the street and do as well as Mike Bray for as long as Mike Bray did it, if you compare everything to football.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't go into it with that mentality. Completely agree with you on that. Yeah, absolutely. Got another men's basketball question here from Stymie. He says, Tom, this year being obvious, why does men's basketball struggle to draw fans even when they're competitive and winning? And I can attest to this because I got a cold call randomly yesterday for me to buy tickets to a men's basketball game, which I thought was funny. And but yeah, I watched a little bit on TV the other night, saw a lot of highlights. Obviously, student section was pretty good. A lot of empty seats at the Florida State game for sure.
I think again, look at what draws on that campus.
Yeah.
And that's Saturday afternoons in the fall across the street. There's so much emphasis placed on football. And this is not necessarily a men's basketball issue. I think it's a university issue.
Yeah.
To where it's not marketed, it's not promoted, it's not celebrated, it's not really given as much attention as it should be. Yeah. Because it's like, you know what? We got football, we got Marcus Freeman. We're going to try to get back to the college football playoff. Basketball will just kind of sell itself, and if people are interested, they're going to find their way there. That might work if you've got a new coach or you've got a program that's historically going to the NCAA tournament year after year after year. But when things tend to slide over there, winning, losing, fan attendance, it's hard to get it back and get it turned around. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if the university has always put its 100% attention and focus and just spotlight on saying, how can we maximize what we do here with the men's basketball program? It's, well, you know what? If they're good, they're good. If they're not, when spring football start?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you make a good point because back, when they were doing the Elite Eights and things like that, Notre Dame basketball ticket was an easy thing to come by. I mean, that place was rocking when they would have home games, and it was fun to go to the Joyce and do everything and watch a game and all that. It's a little rough for these days because there just hasn't been that sustained success. And unfortunately, they need to be successful in order to fill that place up.
Well, people talk about, they've got to win. Okay. Well, what happened last year? They went 24-11. They went 15-5. Guess how many sellouts they had last year when they were making that run to winning NCAA tournament game twice for the first time since 2016. They had one sellout.
One.
That was a Duke game. So, and I also think what works against this basketball program is there's no identity with the ACC. There's nobody in Elkhart, and there's nobody in Granger, and there's nobody in Niles or pick your town up in Michigan that wants to say, I want to venture out at 9:00 to go watch Wake Forest. Hey, the Demon Deacons are in town. There's no identity with the ACC. Now the ACC fits for what Notre Dame men's basketball is in 2023, but there was such an identity in the 70s and the early 80s with playing DePaul and Marquette and Dayton and IU and all teams that were close to campus. You can drive from Dayton. You can drive from Chicago and come in here. You can drive up from Milwaukee. There were so many Marquette fans in that building in December.
Yes.
When Notre Dame and Marquette played, to where, because they've identified, hey, we're playing Notre Dame. That's in South Bend. People in the ACC and people around here don't identify outside of Carolina, Duke, maybe Virginia, sometimes Louisville, sometimes Syracuse. They have no desire to go see any other ACC team when they come to South Bend. And it was kind of like that in the Big East, where Notre Dame was a Midwestern school with an East Coast presence. Now they're a Midwest school with a Southeast presence. And there's just no connectivity to where fans are like, I'm invested in Notre Dame men's basketball because I know these guys that they're playing against.
From an attendance-only standpoint, would Notre Dame be better off in the Big Ten?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Agreed. I mean, you're looking at sellout after sellout after sellout. Michigan State, Michigan, Illinois, Purdue and Indiana speak for themselves. Ohio State, Northwestern, Wisconsin, which hasn't been to play in South Bend since like the 1950s. So from an attendance, from an interest, from an attention standpoint, Notre Dame would be best to join the Big Ten. But we know, Vince, come on, we've been around these parts too long.
Right.
That's never going to happen.
No, they just need to get more Big Ten teams on the schedule. I mean, that if you just try looking for them for attendance purposes, I mean, I will say, because I was at the Michigan State game, and obviously that was where Notre Dame played out of their minds. That wasn't a sellout, but there was an awful lot of butts in the seats, and a lot of them were in green and white. No doubt about that.
Which is okay.
Yeah, which is fine.
That makes for good basketball where there's
good
a
atmosphere.
Back and forth. Yeah, the atmosphere is good. There's a back and forth. The fans are invested. You see,
Right.
I mean, you don't see any fans wearing Wake Forest jerseys or Miami jerseys or Virginia Tech jerseys. But that's the trade-off, and that's the cost with playing in a league that's so far away from your campus.
Yep.
Like when it comes to postseason voting for men's basketball, Notre Dame is in the same district basketball wise as all the Big Ten teams, and it's nearly impossible to get a Notre Dame player to make an all-district team because all the people voting are voting for the Big Ten teams.
Sure.
They're voting for Xavier, guys on Xavier, guys on Dayton. When Loyola, Chicago were good, when they put guys and people nationally forget that Notre Dame is in Indiana and they play in the ACC because it's so Big Ten centric here.
It just doesn't make sense. Like geographically, it doesn't make sense. Yeah, no, you're absolutely. This is a Big Ten footprint. No matter what anybody says, it's a Big Ten footprint, and that's why most people that don't understand the Notre Dame want them to join the Big Ten. I mean, because geographically it makes sense, and I get that argument. But there's everything else. But there's everything else. All right. Last question for the mailbag here, Tom. Another attendance question, but we're flipping across the street to football. True or false? Notre Dame's crowd will be raucous enough to give the Irish a home field advantage against Ohio State and USC in 23.
I'd go absolutely true because if not this year, when? Like, seriously. You know what Ohio State's going to bring. You know what USC did last November. I'm back in November out in the Coliseum against Notre Dame. There should be no more bigger off the chain hook type of games come fall than the Ohio State game and the USC game. And oh, by the way, let's break news right now, Vince, and say I'm going out on a limb. Those are both going to be night games.
Yeah, woo! Breaking news, everybody! Bum, 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 bum.
Blesses, baby.
I agree with you.
They're not kicking those bad boys off at noon. Those are 7:30 starts.
100%. Those are going to be 7:30. I don't care if it says TBA right now. October 14th and November 4th. I'm sorry, that's Clemson. So there it is. USC October 14th and Ohio State is September 23rd.
Yep.
Those are both going to be night games. No doubt about it, which is, what it is. I will say the crowd at Clemson this year for the Clemson game at home, it's a great crowd. I mean, they deserved it. Notre Dame played really, really well. Probably the best game that they played all season, but it was a really good crowd. I mean, I purposely went outside to the deck to hear what the crowd was like at the beginning of the game. And it was a good crowd. I was impressed. It was better than I thought it was going to be.
And no question, Ohio State will be huge because that's the first of two. And if they beat Ohio State, then that slingshots them in October. And like I said, USC, Notre Dame, as much rivalry as it is right now, and with USC having beaten Notre Dame back in the Coliseum in Los Angeles in November.
Yeah.
If those aren't the best home games of the year, what are you doing, Notre Dame fans? What are you waiting for?
Seriously.
What are you waiting for?
Don't sell your tickets, especially to Ohio State fans, okay? Hold on to your tickets. Be a good season ticket holder. Go to that game and cheer on the Irish. Actually stand up, the whole thing. Cheer on the Irish. All right, anyway, get off my attendance soapbox. So that's going to do it for the mailbag. We have one more segment, so don't leave yet. We still have our final segment like we always do. But before you do, make sure you hit that like button, the subscribe button, all that fun stuff. And we'd really appreciate that. All right, Tom, it is time for rapid fire. And it would help if I had my rapid fire questions up in front of me because that would be handy. All right, here we go. Thank goodness for the cloud. All right, here we go. Rapid fire question number 1, Tom. We're going to jump all over the place here. I don't know if you noticed that when I sent you the questions. Well, I'm all over the place today. So this is what happens when I have to come up with the questions. All right. Number 1, The 2023 Notre Dame football schedule was officially released today. We've been talking about it. So fill in the blank. Having 2 byes in a month's span towards the end of the season after playing 8 straight games is blank.
Less than ideal. How about that? You got to try to figure out how to space that out a little bit better.
Yeah.
Especially because you're playing 8 straight weeks before you get to your first bye. So can you get to the back end healthy enough to have those byes be to your advantage is going to be the main thing. But the 8 straight weeks, it's really 9 straight weeks because you're starting out going to Dublin, Ireland.
Yeah.
And usually, and instead of getting a bye week after that in week 0, you're playing at home against Tennessee State. So that trip to Dublin is a tricky trip. It's Navy. You should win that game easily. But it's just the fact of having to go all the way there and all the way back. And instead of getting a bye when you get back, you're right back into game week for Tennessee State. And we saw what happened this past year.
Yeah.
When you have a little letdown, when it's week when you have your home opener after a big buildup, and it's not going to be as big of a buildup. Nothing could ever could match the buildup of Ohio State and Notre Dame in Columbus this past year. But the buildup this year will be big in the fact that it's Sam Hartman, it's the opener, it's Marcus Freeman. He's no longer a rookie coach. This is a Notre Dame team that was 9-4. They're going to win at least 10 games. So the buildup will be big, as it always is for Notre Dame. But you got to come right back and you got to play a game, and then you got to play another one and another one and another one. So less than ideal to have the bye weeks built into the back of the schedule the way they are.
Yeah, it's just puzzling to me. Notre Dame has always done a really good job of having that bye week like right in the middle, like almost smack dab in the middle. It feels like, right in the middle of October or early October. You get a chance to heal up, and then you hit your stretch run. And by playing in week 0, obviously you have an opportunity for 2 byes. I just figured that there would be one in the middle and one towards the beginning, not 2 at the end. I mean, I'm sure Marcus Freeman was consulted. I don't know that it was his final, I don't know that he had final say in the matter, but I'm sure the ACC obviously did as well. But I was very shocked. And somebody said to me, and I think it was Brian, I was texting back and forth with him, and he's like, hey, you do have a couple of games in there that are almost like bye weeks. You can use your depth. You can get into your depth, but people said that about Ball State a few years ago. It said that about Marshall this year.
They said it about Cal.
Yeah.
You don't know what twist and turn is waiting around every corner come college football season.
I don't want it to be that way. Of course, in a perfect world, yes, those games are games where your starter should be out by middle of the third quarter. You can go to your depth. You can do all of those things. That just hasn't been the way it's worked out for Notre Dame, it feels like, over the last few years. You just can't count on that being the case. So that's what worries me is you're just, week after week, just the pounding. And I'm not saying people are going to be injured, but they're going to be hurt. And those bye weeks do a lot to heal you up. And, again, in a perfect world, you got 2 byes toward the end, and you're going to be super healthy moving into the postseason, I suppose, if you have a postseason worth playing for. But it just seemed puzzling to me that that's where they would stick both byes. I don't think I've ever seen a schedule quite like that before.
Nope. Not, like I said, not ideal, but it's the schedule they've got.
Yeah.
Might as well go play it.
You got it. All right, here's an interesting one. We're going to go into the Wayback Machine here a little bit. Tom, buy or sell the 2018 Notre Dame basketball recruiting class as a success?
I'm selling that bad boy. Sell it. Get it out of your portfolio. Clean house. That 2018 recruiting class: Dane Goodwin, Nate Lashevsky, Prentice Hub, Robbie Carmody, Chris Doherty. Chris Doherty wound up transferring to Northeastern, I want to say.
Okay.
Northeastern would not have helped this basketball team because he couldn't get over the homesickness. Robbie Carmody, too many injuries, never got on track. Those other 3 guys.
And they played a lot of minutes.
They played a lot of minutes. They didn't get a lot of wins. They're going to wind up, most of them being here 5 years and going to one NCAA tournament. You just expected more and anticipated more for a class that I believe was ranked in the top 15 in the nation.
They were. That when I looked it up this afternoon, they were 15th in the recruiting class rankings. And I remember that class really well. I remember thinking, wow, this is going to be a good class. And then that freshman year, they were all playing as freshmen, it felt like. They were contributing early. Not all, but you know what I mean? The majority of those guys were playing early. But I think the stat that you brought up, that's the one that matters. They went to one NCAA tournament in their 5 years on campus. That's you can't call that a success, no matter how many minutes they played.
You can't. And I mentioned earlier in the show when I said be careful what you wish for, Notre Dame men's basketball fans, as this program moves forward. This is the classic be careful what you wish for, because for so many years, Prentice Hub took so much crap from so many Notre Dame fans saying he can't shoot, he can't do this, he can't do that. Why is he on the floor? Don't get me wrong. Notre Dame misses Paul Atkinson this year immensely. They miss Blake Wesley this year immensely. But I think the one guy they really, truly miss, and it would be a different case with this season, is Prentice Hub, because the one thing that Prentice Hub brought that's missing right now from this basketball team is a swagger and a cockiness and I'm going to shut this guy and this guy and this guy and this guy up when you go in a road situation. I don't think it's any coincidence, Vince, that last year Notre Dame won 7 games away from its building on its way to winning 24. This year, as we sit here on January 18th, Notre Dame is 0-for. Can't win on the road, can't win at neutral sites, and a lot of that is Prentice Hub, because he brought a swagger and a cockiness that the rest of this program fed off of. And I said, mark my words, people, there will be a time in 2022-23 that you're going to look at it and say, we wish we had Prentice Hub back on this basketball team. You're seeing it now, because if they had Prentice Hub, they probably win at Boston College. They win. They beat St. Bonaventure. They win at Florida State. They win last weekend at Syracuse, and it's a totally different situation.
Yeah.
But they don't have that one alpha, that one guy that's going to be like, you know what, guys, everybody's against us, but get on my back because we're going to figure this out. We're getting out of here with a W.
Are you surprised J.J. Starling isn't that guy, or was he never really that guy, like as far as just from the mentality standpoint? I know he's talented, but.
Yeah, he was a different type of player. Like,
yeah,
J.J. Starling may be more talented right now than Blake Wesley. And I think a lot of people they can't understand that, and they can't make heads or tails of that. But Blake Wesley was more of, I'm going to show you how good I can be. And I don't care if I'm going to shoot 5 of 13 or I'm going to shoot 3 of 17. I'm going to do everything I can to maximize my ability, because I feel like in my heart of hearts, I'm a one and done guy, and I'm going to play like a one and done guy, and I'm going to go for it from day one. JJ's a little different. JJ's a little more talented, but a little more cerebral than Blake Wesley, and was more of, okay, if I have to be a fit-in guy this year and play behind a Trey Wirtz or a Marcus Hammond or a Cormac Ryan, that's okay, because I'm a young guy. Yeah. He did it. He did the same thing when he played at La Lumiere. He played behind Jeremy Fears, who's a guard who's going to Michigan State, and Aiden Holloway, who's a guard going to Auburn. JJ was okay being the fit-in guy last year, whereas Blake Wesley was like, give me the ball. Prentice Hub and I, we got this, and we're going to take Notre Dame back to the NCAA tournament.
All right. All right, next question. Scale of 1 to 10. Your excitement for professional spring football that kicks off February 18th for the USFL, and then again in April for the XFL. So we got 2 leagues going head-to-head for about 3 to 4 weeks in the spring.
Scale of 1 to 10. Let me see. How about where does minus 78 fall into that category? I mean, come on. And look, I'll have to throw the disclaimer out and say I'm not a big NFL guy.
Okay.
I spent so much time on college Saturdays watching Notre Dame, watching who Notre Dame's playing. You don't get a lot of time to watch that much football on a Saturday, especially if it's a home game,
right?
Because you're so tied up in the whole Notre Dame stadium experience that by Sunday I want nothing to do with the NFL. And in the spring, when basketball season's ending, when it's the Masters, when it's nice outside, you're thinking about baseball, you're thinking about summer break,
Yep.
you're thinking about summer vacations, spring football that we're involved in March and April. There is nothing on my radar football wise that would want to grab my attention to sit down and watch spring football. So I'll go minus 78, and even that might be a little high.
I couldn't agree with you more, Tom. I have tried to get into these spring football leagues, but you're right. The timing of it is terrible because honestly, I would probably watch this more if it was during the NFL season as like a minor league, if it was on Thursday nights or I don't even know. But spring, you can't compete with baseball, the newness of the season. And then, of course, we've got spring football that we have to deal with Notre Dame, all the question marks that Notre Dame inevitably has every spring that we get to try to answer, all of those different things. It just doesn't do it. And you've got one of the leagues starting in the middle of February. I realize it's the week. They're starting the week after the Super Bowl. That's just not going to cut it. And the football's just not good football either. That's the other problem. There are better played high school games than what we see with the XFL and the USFL. So it's pretty low for me too. I'll agree with you. You're negative 78. I'm right there with you.
And this is how out of touch I was last spring, that there was even an XFL or that was there even a spring football. In preparation for the first home game against Marshall, I did a column on NBC's new play-by-play guy, Jack Collinsworth, and I talked with Jack for about 30 minutes. And one of my questions was how does he get the rapport and the relationship with working with Jason Garrett, who was the color analyst.
Yeah.
And Jack said, well, we did the XFL together. And I said, man, I didn't know there was an XFL last year. Like that's not even when you cover Notre Dame football, when you cover college football, when you cover college basketball. Last spring, I was also involved in Notre Dame baseball and its run to Omaha.
Yeah.
The XFL is so far off your radar unless somebody from Notre Dame is running for 300 yards a game. Unless like Dexter Williams or Ian Book is throwing for 500 yards a game and 7 touchdowns, then maybe we're a little bit more plugged in. But if it's just kind of there, it's not even on our radar in South Bend, Indiana. It just isn't.
It's just not even close. Not even. And they're gonna do this thing again where they play all their games, or at least most of their games, in like 2 different places. So the team from LA, it doesn't make any sense. Why you play all your games in Birmingham, Alabama, and yet you're called the LA Mustangs or whatever the names are. I don't even know. But like the fans aren't even going to come out for that stuff because they don't have a team to support.
Nope.
It's a flawed business plan in my opinion, but it's only because they can't afford travel is what I'm guessing. But still, it's just not. It's not good. It's not good. All right. Next question. Let's move on to something more exciting. What is your letter grade so far for Notre Dame football's offseason? So you can include, the class that just got signed, as well as the departures and the additions that they've had in the transfer portal. So what grade are you giving them?
Oh, I'm great. I'm grading easy. I feel like my colleague, my part-time colleague at the South Bend Tribune, Anthony Anderson, who covers Notre Dame women's basketball for us. It came time for midterm grades, and he handed out like all A's.
Oh,
like A's across the board.
They're not undefeated.
A minus, no B's, no B pluses. I'm going the Anthony Anderson route and saying Notre Dame's had an A off season because the one issue they had to address, they addressed it, and they addressed it in one heck of a way in getting Sam Hartman at quarterback. They've got other pieces. Defensive end, a corner, a safety, a wide receiver, specialists, which can't go unnoticed.
You're right.
Losing both John Sott and Blake Groupie. They've got veteran specialists, and you haven't seen like a mass exodus into the portal from the younger guys on the roster or older guys that haven't played in 2 or 3 years. So I think they've navigated the offseason. And I'll also include the offseason to not only be the transfer portal or guys or the signing class or returning guys. But let's throw the coaching staff in there as well, because when this thing was 3-3, you're thinking, I don't know what this coaching staff is going to look like come December and January, right? Like, they lost to Marshall, they lost to Stanford. What's the final? What are the final 6 weeks of the regular season going to look like for Tommy Rees or Al Golden or Al Washington? Like, you didn't know. So to keep the coaching staff intact, that's a sneaky good move for Marcus Freeman when everybody's focused on Sam Hartman and getting wide receivers and not losing a key player in the portal. Bringing back that coaching staff was a sneaky good step right now.
I'm with you. I was trying really hard to figure out how not to give them an A, but they hit on all of the things that they needed to hit on when it comes to the roster.
Yep.
Quarterback, check. Defensive line, like a pass rusher, check. A safety, check. A wide receiver, bolster that room, check. I mean, and there's going to be more departures. We know that. There's going to be more guys that leave. But right now, nobody that has left has been completely damaging to the roster right now. And the most damaging person that left was Drew Pine. And I think we can all agree he was going to be third string probably going into next year if he stuck around. So is that a huge loss? He was great for this year. He did his job. It was great. But moving into next year's roster, they haven't lost any one that you would say, man, we really needed him back. The only person I can think of would be like Justin Adamalola, for example. Like I'm sure they would have loved to have him back. Both sides kind of decided it was time to move on from the way I understand it. So that is what it is. But they went out in the portal and they got somebody to fill his spot. So I think they've done a pretty darn good job, and they're not taking any time off. They just had a real successful junior day, over the weekend. And they are hitting the recruiting trail hard. So this offseason is going really, really well for Notre Dame football right now. And I hope it, the trajectory sticks. Let's put it that way.
They navigated it as well as they could. Now you have to navigate that back end of it leading into spring practice, and then what happens leading out of spring practice, because there'll be more portal. There will be more portal movement with guys. Sure. With guys leaving and guys adding, and it's just you're going to have to find that correct kind of roster mix heading into 2023.
All right. Let's see here. Got to pull up the questions. Here we go. Number 5. When asked about his future, this will be a fun one. Packers quarterback Aaron Rodgers says, I think I can win MVP again in the right situation. Is that Green Bay or somewhere else? I'm not sure, unquote. To which Rob Gronkowski, Gronk, he says, bro, why are you thinking MVP? Super Bowls are 5 times greater than an MVP award. It should be Super Bowls. You should never be thinking about MVPs. Do you buy or sell Gronk's reaction?
Selling it, because Gronk's drinking the Tom Brady Kool-Aid. It's easy. It's easy for Rob Gronkowski to say that when you played with Tom Brady and you won Super Bowls with Tom Brady.
That's fair.
Do you not has Rob? I think Rob Gronkowski's spent too much time doing those AARP commercials or Subway commercials or whatever the hell he's doing commercial wise. He's not paying attention to Aaron Rodgers. Does he not realize that Aaron Rodgers is about as much of a me guy as there is in the NFL?
He's the prime guy, man.
I mean, Aaron Rodgers has always been about Aaron Rodgers. So yeah, he's going to talk about how he's going to, because in Aaron Rodgers' mind, if he wins the MVP or if he chases an MVP, that's going to bring whatever team that he's on that much closer to the Super Bowl. So, I mean, that's just the way guys like Aaron Rodgers think.
Sure.
Tom Brady's a different animal. Like to say for Rob Gronkowski to say he's got to be thinking about the Super Bowl because I played with a quarterback that's won 7 Super Bowls. That's a little different. So I'm selling Gronk. Aaron Rodgers is a me guy. He's always been a me guy, whether he's in Green Bay or anywhere else. He's always going to be worried about Aaron Rodgers.
There's no doubt about that. Completely agree with that part of the statement. It's a sell for me for a slightly different reason, only because it's easy for Gronk to talk about the fact that it's not about MVPs because he doesn't have one. And he was never going to get one. He's a tight end. But, you're not even in the conversation for an MVP, but you can talk about another guy talking about getting an MVP. And look, no one hates Aaron Rodgers more than me. Okay, I'm a huge Bears fan, not a big fan of Aaron Rodgers on or off the field. He's a little weird, whatever, but he's a me guy, and he's you can't argue his talent. And he was basically saying, look, I still got football left in me. I just don't know where I'm going to be. I can respect that. Gronk, man, you were never in contention for an MVP, man. So it's easy to say it's all about Super Bowls for you.
Just keep doing those commercials, big man.
That's right. Absolutely. All right, last question. Buy or sell? Sam Hartman has the 6th best odds to win the 2023 Heisman Trophy.
I'll buy them because should Notre Dame fans do Notre Dame fans think he should be higher on the list? No, I'd say no. He should not be higher on the list. He should be down a little bit more because as much as Sam Hartman has accomplished as a college quarterback, as many touchdowns as he's thrown, as many yards as he's thrown for, Sam Hartman has no idea,
none,
what life is going to be like as the quarterback at Notre Dame.
Especially if he's successful.
Exactly. So to say he should be at the top of the Heisman odds or second or third, that's a little too high because the lower down it is, tamp down those expectations because as much as Sam Hartman has done, everything he knows about college football ended the day he committed to Notre Dame because being the quarterback at Notre Dame is a way different animal than being down there in nice and neat and quaint and quiet Wake Forest in Winston-Salem, where you can have a 9-3 season and everyone will pat you on the back and throw parades for you. And if you win 10 games, it's going to be like winning a national championship. The pressure and the scrutiny and the spotlight that Sam Hartman is going to experience at Notre Dame, yeah, it's going to take some getting used to. And if he thought there was pressure on him before,
yeah,
he ain't seen pressure yet.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you look at, I buy it because I think he's about where he should be, and I think also you've got to be pretty happy if you're a Notre Dame fan that that's where he's ending up because that means he's a pretty darn good quarterback, right? So you look at the guys that are above him. Caleb Williams, I mean, he's the returning Heisman finalist. Okay, Drake May, Michael Penix from Washington, Bo Nix, Jordan Travis. Those are the 5 guys that are ahead of Sam Hartman right now. I have zero problem with that. Do I think that Sam Hartman has an opportunity to vault himself up a little higher, especially if Notre Dame does well, knocks off Ohio State or whatever the case may be? Absolutely. But going into the season, I think you got to be pretty excited about the fact that he's sitting in 6th place. I think that's a great spot for him.
If you're a Notre Dame fan, you want him even lower. Like how many people had Max Duggan as as a Heisman finalist in January of 2022? Nobody.
Sure. Nobody.
Like,
he wasn't even the starter.
How many people thought Caleb Williams was going to win the Heisman in his first year playing at USC with Lincoln Riley? Nobody.
Yeah.
You need to be on that list, not in January, but in November. That's 100%. When it matters.
100%. And look, if Ian Book can get Heisman votes, having 16 passing touchdowns like he did, I think it was in 21, then Sam Hartman should have no problem getting some Heisman votes this year. So we shall see what happens, folks. All right, Tom, thank you, my friend, for joining me on this edition of the IB Nation Sports Talk. You are always welcome. You are a friend of the program. I can't wait to have you back on again. Thank you for your insight into men's hoops. Hopefully, they can turn it around a little bit. We have something fun to discuss next time.
Don't hold your breath.
No, all right.
Don't cross your fingers.
I was hoping.
We thought we've seen the worst of it on Tuesday night. We may not have seen the worst of it yet. We'll see.
All right. Well, here's what I do know. I will see you at a good basketball game on Friday night. So I'll look forward to that.
If there's a line stretched out the Bittersweet Road, I'm dropping Vince D'Addario's name to get me in early.
Hey, that's all you got to do. That's all you got to do, buddy. All right. Well, thank you, Tom, for joining us. And thank you, everybody, for joining us on this edition of the IB Nation Sports Talk. I believe Ryan will be on tomorrow night. I'm not 100% sure on that, but check it out. something will be going at 6 o'clock tomorrow. So make sure you check it out. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, give us a 5-star review, leave some comments. We'd love to see what you have to say, but of course, only if it's positive. No, just kidding. Go ahead and leave your review. But for Tom Noie, he's the ND insider at the South Bend Tribune. Check out his work out there. It's always good stuff. I love reading what Tom has to write. I still read it on the old school newspaper, Tom. That's how I do my business, baby. So for Tom, I'm Vince. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. Have a great night.